PC load letter? What the does that mean? Today we're talking about what your title should be. Over the years in different situations, I've been asked what I do. And depending on the situation has always depended on what I tell people that I do. And I always have to judge the room of what are the level of the people that I'm talking about or that I'm talking to. And that might sound kind of bad, but it always depends where I'm at and who I'm talking to. If I'm just talking to friends, I say, oh, I'm a software developer. If I'm talking to businesses or at a network meeting or something like that, I base it on what they are maybe looking for, or I think that they will know what that is, right? If I'm talking to a bunch of people that are looking for websites, I'm not going to say I'm a software developer. I'm going to say I'm a website developer. And that's going into the details of what each type are. You don't really say I'm a website coder. Most people say I'm a website developer. Some people say I'm a website designer. And so that's the differences that I want to talk about in this video with you guys, is because there is a difference in designer and coder and developer and programmer. And I think it's important that you know what you are before you tell people what you are. So talking about your title is important, and if you're talking to other developers and you're not a developer, you shouldn't call yourself a developer. If you install WordPress, you make changes to the text and to the images, and you upload plugins, or you buy plugins and you install plugins, and you just manipulate the WordPress platform or whatever content management system platform that you're doing, you may not be a developer, you may just be a designer. You may be a website manager or an admin, but doesn't necessarily mean you're a developer unless you're developing code and developing plugins. And of course, I want to talk about the difference between a developer, a coder, and a programmer, because there are differences. And up until about 4 years ago, I really didn't realize what those differences were. So depending on the situation, like I said, I would say, somebody'd say, what do you do? Well, I'm a coder, or I'm a software developer, or I'm a software engineer, or I'm a software architect. Or, if I wanted it to sound bigger than it was because I really wanted to get away from those people, or I didn't want them to ask me questions, I may say software architect or software engineer, just to make it sound bigger so they go, ooh, I don't want to ask any questions, because there's going to be questions I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But if I was to say I'm a web developer, they're like, oh, my brother has a website. All right, cool. All right, well, I built my own website. All right, did you build your own website, or did you go to GoDaddy and buy a $5 GoDaddy Tonight website? Not saying that's a bad thing, just saying there are those websites out there and people say, I built my own website. You bought your website and you put in the content. There's a difference. All right, so go back, let's talk about the differences between a developer, coder, and a programmer. About 4 years ago, I started working with a guy that worked with one of my clients, and he had built some stuff, and he had kind of maxed out maybe his ability or needed some help, I guess. And so I sat down with him for a couple of weeks and was helping him write code for the site. And that's when I realized the difference between a coder, a programmer, and a developer. He was a really good coder. Now, what I like to call a coder is someone that follows the rules of code, and that's all they do. You need them to do a specific thing, they're going to write code based on exactly what they were taught, and they're not going to break outside of those rules and do their own thing. They're going to write code based on exactly what they were taught. Programmers, I don't like to associate programming or programmers with software development, because to me, programming sounds like you have a VCR that needs to be programmed. When I was 5, I could program my VCR, my grandparents' VCR. And my grandparents thought that was the greatest thing in the world. They're like, ooh, we bought a new VCR, and Josh is able to program that VCR. Sounds like you're programming a copy pot. It doesn't sound like you're building or developing software or websites. It sounds like you're programming, you're clicking buttons to set the time of that you want it to start. That gets into maybe the settings, or cron jobs. Maybe you program a cron job. You program a cron job to run at a certain time, right? You don't develop a cron job. Well, you develop the file that runs in that cron job, but you program the cron job, right? So that's the difference for me, is a coder follows the rules. A developer thinks outside the box and finds a solution for what the client needs, or what you need for your website or software. So you say, I want my software or website to do this. And then you go to the internet and you look up how other people have done it, and you copy and paste that into the website. You test it, make sure it runs, everything looks good, and you're ready to go. You are a coder. You have coded your website. You've coded HTML and CSS. Those are coders. And we'll talk about programming languages, and some people say HTML and CSS are not programming languages, which I sort of agree. HTML is not really a programming language. It's just a framework, I guess is what you would call it. CSS has become more of a programming language, but we'll talk about that in another video. So, coder follows the rules and writes code based on what they're told to write code on. And that could be, like I said, going out and finding code someone else has written and using that code in your website. A developer will start from scratch. Now, I'm not saying start from scratch on everything you do, because a lot of times there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And if it's already written and it works great and it's for what you need, go ahead and use that. But a developer thinks outside the box and says, I need to find a solution for what we need on this website. Not, oh, here's what everyone else has done. I'm going to type out exactly what they did. And that is a coder. And so when I started working with this guy 4 years ago, I sat down with him and I was looking through his code and going, wow, he's a great coder. And in the 90s, when I was in college, I was a coder. I worked for a company remotely. And what I did is I downloaded, well, my job was to connect to the internet. That might sound funny to you guys, but it was actually to connect to the internet because we had to use a modem with dial-up. High speed wasn't a thing yet. So connect to the internet, download a section of code that the developers had written, analyze that code, look for errors, add comments, clean up the tab and the spacing and stuff like that of the code, and then re-upload that code. And then another coder would test that to make sure that I did what I was supposed to before they push it live or send it back to the developers so the developers can continue what they were doing. So at that time, I was a coder. Someone, would ask me what I did, and I'm a coder. Of course, I was in college, so I was a college student, but the coder title that I had was literally just downloading code, reviewing code, looking for errors, cleaning up code, adding comments, cleaning up the tabs and stuff like that. So at that time, I was a coder. But I was also a developer because I developed stuff on my own that wasn't part of that job. But as that job, I was a coder. So as I sat down with this guy 4 years ago and looked at his code, I was like, man, he is a really good coder. Got great comments. The code is clean. It's, grouped correctly with different folders and, stuff like that. He had it was just good, clean code. And as I'm working with him and I said, hey, we need this software to be able to do this, I quickly realized that he was going in and finding what someone else had done and using that and maybe adjusting it to work with the system that he was building. And I sat back for a second and I said, wow, after all these years, I now realize that there's a difference between a coder and a developer. And working with him, and I said, look, you're finding solutions that have already been written. You're spending as much time taking that pre-written solution and customizing it, kind of developing it, customizing it to meet your needs. When if we built it ourselves, we would probably save a little bit of time. It would be more customizable to what the software we're building actually needed. And it would be faster. It would load faster, it would run faster, it would run better based on what we've already built. So let's develop it ourselves instead of going and finding that someone else has done and putting it in the system. And he kind of gave me a look of like, what? So over a period of 2 or 3 months of working on this project with him, he became a developer, a great developer, one of the best developers that I've worked with now. And he now understands it too. He understands that he was a coder and now he's a developer. And when somebody, his boss or somebody in the company says, I need the system to be able to do this, he might go look and see what other people have done, but he knows he can build something that no one else has built. And he now realizes that by doing that, we've made a better solution than what he was able to find on the internet. Now, I want to ask you guys, what do you call yourself? Leave me a comment in the comment section below of what you use as your title, and if this video changed that title for you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope this has got your wheels turning of what you are going to call yourself as your title. Click that subscribe button if you want to see future videos of me. Single click that like button if you like this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Oh, I have to do some work, then I have to have more coffee.